In 2018, the CEO of Sears filed his own company for bankruptcy. Then he submitted a bid to buy it. The man who ran Sears into the ground bought it for cents on the dollar. His name was Eddie Lampert, and what he did was completely legal. Sears wasn't just a retailer. At its peak, Sears sales alone accounted for 1% of the entire US economy. 2/3 of all Americans shop there in any given quarter. Not once a year, any given quarter. The company was founded in 1886 by Richard Sears, a railroad agent in Minnesota who bought a shipment of watches a jeweler didn't want and sold them for a profit. That small arbitrage grew into the most dominant retail operation in American history. By 1888, Sears had a catalog. By 1925, the first physical store opened in Chicago. By the 1970s, Sears operated over 3,500 stores and built the Sears Tower at 1,454 feet, the tallest building in the world at the time. They invented the catalog. They invented the suburban department store. They launched Allstate Insurance, Dean Witter Brokerage, Coldwell Banker Real Estate, and the Discover credit card. Sears didn't just sell America its products. Sears built the infrastructure of American consumer life. And then one man decided it was worth more dead than alive. But here's what almost no video about Sears mentions. When Eddie Lampert took control in 2005, Sears was struggling, but it was generating cash. The stores were still profitable. The brand still had power. The problem wasn't the business. The problem was what Lampert did with it. Let's get there. Eddie Lampert was called the next Warren Buffett. Business Week put him on the cover. Time magazine celebrated him as part of a new breed of hedge fund managers. His fund, ESL Investments, had delivered 24.5% average annual returns for 15 years. He had bought Kmart out of bankruptcy for $800 million and turned it into a $3 billion operation. In 2005, he used Kmart's stock to acquire Sears in an $11.5 billion deal, creating Sears Holdings, the third largest retailer in America. Everyone believed Lampert was going to do for Sears what he had done for Kmart. He had a different plan. Here is how a stock buyback works, and why this one was a trap. When a company buys back its own stock, the share price goes up. Shareholders get richer. The CEO, if he owns a lot of stock, gets richer. But the company spends cash it could have used to invest in stores, technology, or employees. Imagine owning a restaurant, taking $6 million out of the kitchen budget to buy your own shares, and then wondering why the food got worse. That's what Lampert did to Sears, at a scale of billions. Between 2005 and 2012, Sears spent $6 billion buying back its own stock. $6 billion. Enough to have built a world-class e-commerce platform, renovated every store in the chain, and cut prices to compete with Amazon and Walmart simultaneously. Instead, it went to shareholders. And Lampert, who controlled nearly 40% of Sears Holdings, was the largest shareholder. But here's the detail that no one talks about. As Sears started losing money, Lampert's hedge fund, ESL, began lending money directly to the company. Sears borrowed hundreds of millions from its own CEO's fund, at interest. By the time of the bankruptcy, ESL owned 40% of Sears' total debt load. Think about what that means. Lampert was simultaneously the CEO, the largest shareholder, and the largest creditor. He was running the company owning the company, and lending money to the company, collecting interest while it collapsed. Unsecured creditors later accused ESL of having siphoned value away from the company on favorable terms at the expense of everyone else. The stores kept getting worse. Employees were cut. Maintenance budgets slashed. Former employees described walking into Sears locations that looked abandoned, broken fixtures, empty shelves, staff who hadn't been trained. Customers noticed, and they stopped coming. Here's the question nobody asks about Sears. If Lampert was so smart, the next Warren Buffett, why did he run the company into the ground? The answer is that he never believed Sears was a retail business. He believed Sears was a real estate business. He thought the value wasn't in the stores, it was in the land under them. His strategy was to sell off assets, spin off divisions, and extract value from the real estate portfolio. The problem? Retail doesn't work that way. You can't cut your way to relevance. You can't harvest a brand while simultaneously destroying it. When the stores deteriorated, customers left. When customers left, sales fell. When sales fell, the real estate became worthless too. The strategy that was supposed to save Sears destroyed the very thing that made the real estate valuable. In October 2018, Sears filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. 68,000 employees lost their jobs. 3,500 stores had become 700. The pension fund owed to retired Sears employees was underfunded by hundreds of millions. And Eddie Lampert, through ESL Investments, submitted a $5 billion bid to buy the remaining assets of the company he had just run into bankruptcy. He bought Sears out of its own bankruptcy. The man who ran the company into the ground bought it for cents on the dollar. Here is the final number. When Lampert took over in 2005, Sears Holdings had a market cap of approximately $30 billion. By 2018, it was worth essentially nothing. $30 billion destroyed in 13 years. Not by Amazon, not by Walmart. Sears invented the catalog before the internet existed. They invented mail-order retail 100 years before Amazon. They had the brand, the real estate, the customer base, and the cash flow to compete in any era. Sears didn't lose to the internet. Sears lost to a man who was paid to save it and got richer while it died. What's the most valuable company you've ever seen destroyed from the inside? Tell me in the comments.